NBA training camps are just a few weeks away, and considering the chaotic offseason that we just had, there will be plenty of intrigue heading into the 2022-2023 campaign. Whether it's following along some of the championship favorites or keeping tabs on some teams that really just hit the restart like the Utah Jazz and began the journey of a new rebound, this season, it should be exciting overall. Today in this video, we're not going to focus on the top teams, we're not going to focus on the bottom teams, we're going to look at the teams that are projected to be middle of the pack. As you guys know, I've been doing a series where I've been covering the top 2 teams in each division. I don't want to leave teams out, so we're going to do a top 5 of which teams that are on the biggest hot seat that have been middle of the pack for far too long, that haven't been winning, haven't been losing. They need to make a decision on whether they're going to rebuild or they're going to be buying so that they can become a contender. We're going to look at some of the middling line teams or playoff hopefuls that will be facing a fair share of pressure this season. Teams that either need to take a step forward or need to figure out if their core can take that next professional step to be able to be a contending team. Before we fully get into this video, I just ask that you go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I'm looking to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I would graciously appreciate if you guys help in facilitating me doing that. But without further ado, let's get into this one. At number 5, the number 5 team I have is the New York Knicks. After being one of the bigger players during the NBA offseason this year, the New York Knicks will have plenty to prove after the 2023 season. Not only did they land one of the most sought after free agents in Jalen Brunson, but they also gave RJ Barrett a huge extension. Originally, they were looking to trade for Donovan Mitchell, but reports came out that they gave themselves a deadline for trading him, and if they didn't trade for him by that deadline, they're going to give RJ Barrett the extension, which they gave him the extension. Now, the pressure only got worse because the Donovan Mitchell trade didn't get to the Knicks and he ended up going to Cleveland, which is another team in the East that could potentially leap over the Knicks. New York gave big money to both Brunson and Barrett this offseason, and if they fail to make the playoffs, it's going to be a disappointment to say the least. Now, I think the Knicks will make the playoffs, do not get me wrong. Shit, at the very least, they better make the playoffs for the sake of the front office and the people that are there. There'll be much more pressure on the team if they don't make the playoffs, and I don't think it'll be just from the owners. The fans will be very, very pissed off. The noise is always louder in New York. Nothing is shocking about that. It's one of the bigger markets in the league. The question is, can the Knicks live up to that pressure and answer it this season? Only time will tell. The next team I got on this list is the Chicago Bulls. This team is facing pressure not only because they built pretty much a star-studded team, but they were top of the pack in the East for majority of the year last year. After backing into the playoffs last season as opposed to falling forward into the playoffs and not doing much, they got there, and they got there. That's pretty much it. With as much talent that is on the roster, something has to change in Chicago. If they fail once again this season, there might be some loud talks about it, but it is their second season, so it's very early in the project, so you never know. Last offseason, the Bulls spent big money on Lonzo and DeMar DeRozan, and if this team can't produce, it's gonna be trouble. It could go down as one of the biggest disappointments in recent history, especially with how their first season took place. It's quite unfortunate that Ball is battling through injury issues because, like I said before in older videos, I love Lonzo Ball, I love his game, but it just sucks that he's been injured. The Bulls have talent on their roster. There's no question about that. You have Zach LaVine, you have DeMar DeRozan, you have Lonzo Ball, you have Kobe White, you have Vucevic, you have talent. So there's no reason for this team to fail. If they fail to capitalize on that for 2 years in a row, the front office is going to have some explaining to do, and Chicago is going to need to show us something. Chicago needs to show some type of level of improvement this season, one way or another, and I think that'll be the only thing that gets us convinced that this team might have a future ahead of them. The next team I have on this list is the Denver Nuggets. This one may be a bit shocking, but the Denver Nuggets is another team that I believe may be on the clock. The last couple years, they've had a contending roster. The issue has been injuries, and Jokic has essentially been by himself. This team that many believe would have had a strong chance to break through the Western Conference after losing to the Lakers in the bubble a few years ago. Though in the last 2 seasons they were greatly impacted by injury, this team really is a great team going forward. Heading into 2022-2023 with a healthy roster, there's gonna be some pressure on the Nuggets to join the elite ranks in the West again. Even though they have players coming back off of injury, there's no time to waste, and Denver is looking for them to actually make some noise noise and be a contending team in the West. Now, that might be easier said than done because we all know the West is always difficult. It may be the most difficult conference in basketball, the same way the AFC is normally the most difficult conference in football. Objectively speaking, a trio of Jamal Murray, MPJ, and Jokic, that should be one of the best trios in the league, if not top 3. Finishing in the top 3 of the West is not impossible for this team as talented as they are, and the Nuggets should be a contender for this year. Even more so if Jokic can continue to play at an MVP level like he has over the last few seasons. This team is primed to do something and make some noise. It's just about getting to that point and being able to do it. The second to last team I have on this list would be the New Orleans Pelicans. Many may not believe that the Pelicans are facing pressure this season, but to be honest, I'd like to argue against that. Looking objectively, Zion Williamson, who is finally healthy again, will be entering his 4th year of his career. How many games has he played? I don't even think he's played enough games to equate to 1 year of a career. So to be in the league for 4 years and only play a handful of games, that's alarming. He missed all of his 3rd season, but there is some added pressure considering it all. Add that to the fact that the Pelicans finished on an upward trend last year. There's a level of expectation that Zion is only going to make this team better. Now, the pressure might more so be on Zion than anything else, but that means that at the very least, the Pelicans must make the playoffs. With how deep the Western Conference is, that is easier said than done, and though this team is probably a top 5 team if they're in the East, on the West, that's a harder feat to accomplish. They have a talented core with Zion, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum, and that's a core that should be a playoff team and probably much more. We'll see if the New Orleans Pelicans can live up to that this year, but I think this team, they would be a perfect team on the Eastern Conference, but in the West, it's a little bit too hard, and I don't think they'll really do too much past the 1st round. The last team we got on this list is the Portland Trail Blazers. Now, I'm surprised this team hasn't blown up and rebuilt it 2 years ago. They seem a couple years too late with regards to a rebuild. When they traded CJ McCollum, I thought it was time. I thought Dame was next out of there, but I stand corrected. Dating back to the NBA trade deadline last season, the Portland Trail Blazers elected to retool around Dame as opposed to rebuilding. Along with showing their loyalty to him, they gave him a hefty contract extension, and heading into this next season, they're trying to prove that they can do what they got to do to be nice in the West. Heading into this year, it'll be time to prove that the front office was right in trading CJ McCollum and then acquiring Jeremy Grant via trade. Considering all that, the Trailblazers may be a team that's difficult to judge. In the deep Western Conference, there's a strong chance that they're probably in the play-in, but they're gonna be one of those teams that's still pretty good, sort of like the Pelicans. The Pelicans and the Trailblazers are just unlucky teams to be in the Western Conference, because if they were in the East, I'm confident in saying they would probably be top 6 or 17. The Blazers sold Lillard on a retooling of the roster that was going to put them in a great position to compete in the West. Right now, they're not really all that. They still have some time to continue to retool this roster, but this offseason doesn't have much to desire for the Portland Trailblazers, so I don't see how they retool too much more going into the season. But that's all I got for you guys in this video. If you enjoyed this video like any other video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for your boy. And until next time, it is your boy TB with the greatest hoop stories and debates on the tube, and I'm out. Peace.